So I got two classes rattling around in my head, which are two themes, and a lot of times that happens. And sometimes I go for, usually I do this, I kind of figure that even though they don't seem like they connect to me in my head, they probably do, and that's why my mind's going to both things. And so one of the definitions of creativity is making connections between things, discovering connections between things. So as usual, this class will be one of those experiments that I do. All right. So there's a song by Dave Matthews that I went for years thinking, if you don't know this about me, I don't hear like the end of lyrics and words quite right. So I go through my life living lies, like thinking I know the lyric to a song and I don't. And so there's a song, it's a beautiful love song called You and Me Together by Dave Matthews. Okay. And it's a very sweet song, right? But there's a line that I've actually taught whole classes on that I had wrong, right? I had it exactly the opposite of what was intended, right? So the line that I heard, remember, I'm ready to be a Dave Matthews fanboy at any time, right? Just so you know, this is one of those secrets about me that are just true. And so I thought the line was, and I remember thinking, because he writes great lyrics, if you don't know, like Dave Matthews writes great lyrics. And they're not bad musicians, holy cow. But and they're a fun conglomeration of different instruments. But the line I thought I heard was, you and me are tied to the ground, not falling but rising, like rolling around. So let me say it again. You and me are tied to the ground, not falling, but rising, like rolling around, like joyful, like the way a little kid loves playing on the floor. Okay. So I remember thinking, crap, I wonder if Dave Matthews knows this truth about yoga. Like I remember thinking all these things like, holy cow, if he's even knowing that stuff, that's incredible. Well, so I've taught many a class, many a time. I've been like teaching from that line in this song and seeing how it overlaps my experience and all those things. And then not too long ago, I actually looked at the lyrics and it said, you and me are not tied to the ground, not falling, but rising, like rolling around. So in other words, he did not realize the mystical nature of realizing your base. I thought he did. I thought he put it into a love song because I loved the idea of that we are tied to earth, right? But we're not falling. Because we're tied to the earth, we're actually rising, right? And the rising is like rolling around, right? And I actually believe, as you know, it's one of the principles of our entire method of teaching asana, which is you have to go down to go up, right? That there's, when you realize base, when you actually become more aware and receiving the sense of the ground, you actually rise. And I've actually said it this way, which sounds more like dark, but we're rising and falling in every day, every moment of every day, right? That in fact, asana is trying, this is the problem where I get too philosophical, right? Where asana is trying to reflect the existential truth of rising and falling somewhat simultaneously, right? Just like our life arc, right? We're rising and falling simultaneously, so that asana is a reflection of an existential truth that our minds can't fully grasp. So see that put everyone to sleep, right? Like as soon as I talk like that stuff, you're like, ugh, yeah, that's where I hang out, right? That's where the words come from. So sit up straight and tall for a second. So one of the reasons why I'm constantly wanting to wiggle in the beginning of class and lengthen your low back is because that's rising like rolling around, right? Like, wait, okay. It doesn't all have to be so gosh dang serious, right? Like, and forward and back. And I'm thinking, for this next however amount of time we have, I want my spine to be the seat of my consciousness, not my head. Right. So I'm moving back and forth and I'm doing mini back bends and you might call it cat cow, but I'm trying to create an awareness of the energy in my body, right? By moving around a little bit playfully, right? Okay, so I'm gonna make sure, wait, I got stuff under my collarbones. I've been used to think this line about lifting the collarbones. I thought it was uh, it is, but it's a good instruction for a beginner when you're trying to get them to lift their chest, but from a different point, from a different place. But when you try to lift on your collarbones, you tend to grip your diaphragm too much, but whatever, it's a good beginning instruction. But the idea of feeling your sitting bones and lifting under your collarbones, but broaden between the shoulder blades to lift under your collarbones. Then hit down through your sitting bones again. Now include your legs by extending from the inner groin to the inner knee. So now you're actually not just lifting your collarbones, you're actually balancing it with back body awareness and using that to find the ground from your inner groin to your inner knee down to your inner heel. And so now your awareness of where you are in space and the awareness of the room just changed. So now be more open to the empty space in the room, but stay vibrant inside your body. Realize your boundary in order to realize connection. There's a big line. Realize your boundary in order to realize connection. Soften the jaw, the inside of the mouth, balance the head over the neck. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. As you soften the inside of your mouth, don't lose connection to your sitting bones. Don't drift, right? Stay sturdy. If you want to and can while staying on balance, bring your hands into prayer. If you can't do that and stay on balance, which I can't unless I put my elbows down, practice symmetry. So like there are things you can do to do that, like feel each inner heel, each inner thigh. Between where each shoulder blade is. Let there be a line down the center of your nose. Be a mirror image of each side of that. So when you start doing symmetry, realize that one side's dominating over the other. So use asana to make it even. So our nervous system is wired to be more both interoceptively aware and proprioceptively aware. Let go of your day. Prepare your mind to do yoga. Good, and then release. Bring your hands down to your thighs, palms up. Sternum up towards your chin. Chin down and over your sternum. Increase the intensity of the sensation of stability by lifting the rib cage, letting the spine come forward and migrating forward into the body. Lifting the sternum, dropping the chin. You're bringing an intensity to the sensation. Now re-soften the inside of the mouth. Keep the intensity and expand into the softness from the intensity. If you're being over intense, you're going to start fatiguing. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. The intensity of that bandha is actually quite fatiguing, at least for me. Right. It has to do because I'm fused in my upper back and I'm paralyzing the abdominals. And so I end up overdoing my diaphragm and all this stuff. That's not an easy position, but it's an important one. All right. So on your leg or on the table in front of you, bring one elbow down, kind of cross it a little bit on the midline. Right. Now activate your spine by lifting your chest. Right. Now, any action can become yogic, but you have to feel stuff and then release. Go to the other elbow. So the other class that I'm less likely going to get into, I can now tell it's not going to come out. It's going to be too much, right? So again, I'm pressing down at the elbow. I'm hitting my sitting bones down. I'm lifting my chest. I'm adding a little dynamic twist without trying to twist, just by crossing my midline. And I'm still lifting my sternum up, hitting down through my sitting bones, lengthening my back. Good, and then come on back to center. Right, so you can make anything yogic, any movement, right? So I'm going to go the first way again. I'm going to go think impulsively, well, maybe I can sneak this other class in here. Maybe, right? You ever like done this and maybe lightly touched your own forehead? Because you know, reference on your frontal cortex calms down your mind. So when I don't do it, I get one thing. When I do it, I step just a little bit closer to Shirsasana, to headstand. Good, and then come on back together. Like what? What? These little things can matter. Depends on how well you receive. Right? Depends on what you decide to receive. Right? So now I'm going to do this. And remember the frontal cortex, if you're being really agitated, reference on the frontal cortex actually calms your brain down a little bit. Or it can. Right? But I'm still doing the gentle twist and I'm lifting the sternum, hitting down through my sitting bones. Now I'm adding this dimension of inwardness. Good, and then release. So wait, so if this action, so one of the things we tell people when they're having trouble with regulation, we teach this to healthcare professionals too, for themselves and for their clients, right? When they're really agitated, you pick your hand, one of your hands, right? Place your heel of your hand lightly on the bridge of your nose and lay down your fingers on your hairline, basically, but light, right? And then, like you're moving, this is Amy's line, like tissue paper, just slightly pull the skin real lightly towards the bridge of the nose. So the bridge of the skin on the forehead towards the bridge of the nose. right? And then come back up. When I do that, my eyes actually go out of phase for a while. I have to come back to make my eyes focus, right? Because I actually receive what's happening. And I do it with the other hand now. And this, I don't supinate this wrist as well because it broke so badly. So this one, I already know my body's not set up to be as receptive for, right? So I'm practicing yoga both on my good side and my not so as effective side. And I'm allowing for both, right? I'm not just always going to go to what's best. I'm not going to wallow in what's worse either, right? I'm going to like let the yoga teach both sides of my body. Right? So now when I'm aware of this, I can tell that the way my wrist was reset on this one does not allow as much connection to my elbow and to the center of my chest down to my base. It's okay. No babies are dying here. Good, and then come on back. I just broke a little bit, right? And now I'm going to watch my eyes come back. Like my body got messed up. Probably yours did too, right? So not everything is an equal receiver in your own body. Sit up straight and tall, so start to move around again. So you get to visit stuff like that or not every single day, right? In your practice, you get like, I don't want to go think about my wrist too much right now, right? But I'm not going to pretend it's not different, right? So I'm going back and forth. So the class that I thought I was going to teach or talk about was actually more philosophical than this, right? Which was trying to make practical. So maybe this line, so again, I'm moving around a little bit, right? Getting lighter, like rolling around, right? Because the thing about, getting too philosophical is that it's not very alive, right? And asana in particular is about refining your aliveness, right? All right. So does this make sense to you? This is something I think is inherent, embedded in the yogic approach, is that the mind as an organ of perception generally faces outward, right? And in fact, in yogic philosophy, it's going to be identified as the tendency of the mind to face outward through the organs of perception, right? Is actually the root of suffering. So they introduce this word called attachment, right? Think of attachment as the places your mind kind of go to over and over again, right? The places where it's kind of the past been worn down and your mind goes there without even knowing it, right? And so, and it's a way of having outward, of having places outward facing, right? Now, having our minds be outward facing, which I think a beautiful line is by Bigas Iyengar, is the mind is the outer envelope of consciousness, right? It's the outer envelope. It's not the inner envelope, right? So the mind tends to go outward because that's what helped us survive, right? If I'm super inward in a meditative state and a tiger's coming at me, I'm probably going to be the one that doesn't have my gene pool continue on the planet, right? I'm going to actually go, right? Because I'm thinking, I'm not reacting outwardly. So we're wired for outward. Okay. So that's okay. Right. But where are the places? Think of the places that your mind always travels to. Right. I'm moving again because these are trying to keep these thoughts practical. Where are the places? Does anyone continually go to the place that you're not good enough? Right? It's somehow something you're not doing. Right? That somehow you're not worthy. You've done something wrong. Right? Inhale, take your arm up. Anyone know that place? Take arm on the side. Anyone know that place, that actual like attachment? but attachments process things, right? So there's an energy of discomfort or uncomfortable with you entering the world. And so your mind turns itself destructively against yourself, right? Because then it can get its teeth into it. Other side, inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. Good, and then come on back to center. So I wonder why I'm emphasizing twists right now, right? Again, inhale up. As I'm talking this philosophical crap, I'm actually doing the one series of poses that are cleansing poses. They cleanse, right? And then come on back to center. And then inhale up, exhale. So now I'm going to add some more yoga. So inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve, lift on the collarbones. Those are throwaway lines, right? But now, lifting on the collarbones actually has a downward dimension. Remember, we're tied to the ground, but we're not falling. We're rising like rolling around. So the fact that we're connected to the ground, especially us, one thing about living with a disability, inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. Come on back to center. Have you noticed that living with a disability makes you feel, especially if it's physical, makes you feel that gravity's way heavier? You're way more tied to the ground. So I'm thinking Dave Matthews whispering in my ears, right? He's saying you're not tied to the ground, you're rising. You're not falling, you're rising like rolling around. And all of a sudden I start to see a different kind of hope, right? So I'm moving around again. I'm going to add in a downward facing dog because I want to get this realization more active. What? These are just thoughts, Matt. They're not realizations. Are you sure? Right? Depends on how you receive them. Lift under the collarbones. Hit your hands down. Broaden across the collarbones. Broaden the space between the shoulder blades. Broaden across the sacrums. Draw a straight line from your inner knee down your inner groin, inner knee, inner heel. Extend. Start to lift the space under your arms. Right? So the space, I want the space between your arms and the table, or your arms and your thighs, to actually become dimensional. Right? Now watch what happens when you drop your chest. The space underneath your arms actually loses its texture. It loses dimension. Oh my God, you mean my chest makes the space under my arms dimensional? What the hell, Chuck? Huh. Good, and then release. So the body, the mind can see the empty, right? It can't see the dimension. It takes the body to show the dimension. Take your arms wide, right? Have I ever had you like realize the space under your arms, right? And then, so you hold your fatigue for a little bit, but now be more aware of the skin, right? And place your arms lightly on the empty space, right? Whoa. Oh, what? Good, and then release. So if you're trying to place your arms on empty space, right? What the hell does that even mean, man? Right? I have no idea, except was anyone able to do it? Yeah, so, okay, here we are again. What the hell, Chuck? Right? We're not falling, we're rising like rolling around. Right? If you realize what's happening here, right? All right, try it again. And don't worry if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, placing your arms on empty space. As you drink more Kool-Aid, it'll start to make more sense. And then either we're collectively insane together, or there's something here. There's something here. Watch your breath. Now, I like on the screen, some of you are already adjusting the pose. I'm watching Gay not take her arms wide, but broaden her shoulders, or take your arms down. I'm seeing Amanda have her arms down at her sides. I'm seeing one person hold one arm more than the other. That's the kind of adjustment I want you to do. I don't want you to just go, oh yeah, I love my body. I don't have to do both sides. I want you to do more yoga, meaning not take both arms wide, but follow the sensation of integrated yoga and have it include your body, right? Receive more from your poses. Try it again. Well, I think I'm getting bored. We could do this all day, right? But if I want to set my arms and realize the space under my shoulders, under my arms, try dropping your chest and see what that does for you. Good, and then release for a second. When you drop your chest, did anyone notice an extra flexion of muscle on the top of the shoulder and on the arm? And suddenly the world gets stupider again, like somehow the water got squeezed right out of it. Oh no, that's really hard, right? So my dimensionality of realizing the space around my body depends on the position of my chest, right? Remember, mind is lonely in empty space. Body gives it dimension. Arms wide again. Okay, now I'm going to lift my sternum. Feel the underside of my arms. Find that lightness in the empty space. Breathe. Good, and then release. So the yogis, one of my premises is that the yogis kind of got bored, and so they developed asana. They started varying the body. So now we're going to do the same thing with the arms wide, but I'm going to keep my arm down, right? But we're just going to introduce the variable of gravity, right? So I was doing it once this way, right? And so now what I want to do is I'm going to lean over. Actually, I will do it with both arms, right? Like I'm going to go that, so I'm changing gravity. And I'm not going to hold that long because I can tell it's violent on my neck. So I'm not going to hold that very long. I'm going to go the other way. And then for a second, I'm going to pretend I'm a little kid running around remember, did you ever play airplane, any of you? When you're a little kid, you banked back and forth on the airplane. Yeah, so I want to remember the rolling around, right? So if you were not born with the disability, did you ever think like you couldn't figure out when you jumped off like a little hill why you didn't just keep flying? Like I could have sworn when there was a mound in my backyard and I'd jump off and I'd think, I don't get why I come back down. I think I could just, if I did it just right? And then all right, so I'm gonna come forward and lift up, right? I'm gonna come forward and lift up. And I'm thinking, well, how do I maintain the lift even when I fall back down? So I'm going to feel the sensations. I'm going to stay lifted even when I return. Then I'm going to take that energy ground and back bend. And then come forward. And then come up. And I'm watching as I'm doing. And I'm letting the doing precede the watching. What? Remember, my body shows me dimension. My mind needs to be more passive to see what's happening. Okay, take your legs wide. Ooh, holy tight groin. Ooh, right? So I'm jiggling it loose a little bit, right? I'm going like, oh, there we go. I'm not forcing it open, coming forward. I'm spreading my knees. Now I'm combining two movements, right? Because I know how to like coax my body into being open, right? So if I come forward and move my knees out, right? So just okay, I gotta get them open, right? This is how we've been taught to deal with our disabled bodies, right? Gotta get them open. No, actually, I need to finesse the openness. I need to invite my body. So now I'm combining a rhythmic movement, a change in gravity to a spreading of my knees. So I'm imprinting my mind how to feel the energy. So now I'm going to try to do more. I'm going to do this, come forward, spread my knees, and broaden across my sacrum. So I'm going to go right from the midline out through each knee as I'm changing gravity, as I'm lifting my chest. Right? And it just kind of looks like I'm moving. I'm going to do it again. So remember, I'm trying to finesse my groin into being open without losing the ground, right? Because I want the ground to be like rolling around, not something that I push off of. Good, and then I like that. Does anyone like that? See, I like the coaxing. Now I'm gonna launch and I'm changing again. This is something we do almost every Monday because I want you to launch out of your chair this week, out of a sitting position, right? I want you to get nourishment, right? In the core of the launch, right? So I'm going to go the other way again. So we're doing a whole bunch of hybrid of different standing poses right now, right? We're doing an aggregate of a whole bunch of them, right? But it looks like, remember, the mind looks for attachment into like the order they think it's supposed to have, right? So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go back to the midline because I don't want to lose Tadasana. Because my groin's just been, whoo, that was a party, right? I got like, and I'm going to land the energy back in my midline and learn how to receive it in my chest. What? Yeah. Remember, it's boundary that sets you free. So I've had this open for a long time. So my energy is kind of like, my nervous system is more proprioceptively connected. It's out in space, right? I want to make sure that I don't lose the ground, that my mind doesn't follow the openness into disassociation, right? So I'm coming back to the midline and I'm moving my knees back together, lifting my chest, finding the ground so I can go back to the open pose and have the ground be like rolling around, right? So I'm forward and I'm going to get a little happy by doing that, right? Because that bursts the center of my chest into the weak, right? And forward. And now I'm going to make a sequence out of this. Knees together, forward, lift my chest, right? Let them flail out. Knees together, forward, lift my chest, and try to be aware of each side of between my shoulder and my neck and my ears. So I'm trying to get the pose and the movement to be part of the whole. Forward, up, lift the chest, notice between the shoulder and each ear. All right, so now I'm going to make it even more. I got to stop because my mind's getting too focused. So I'm just going to rock a little bit, right? right? So now I'm gonna bring my knees together, lift my chest, right? Feel the space between the shoulders and my ears. Hit down through the sitting bones, extend through the top of my head. Breathe. Dang it, I breathe into my right lung more than my left. That's ironic. Good, and then release. That's ironic because it's my right lung that collapsed. It's the one that actually has more problems with it. Except it seems to be my lung of choice, right? So maybe because I'm right-handed. So now I'm coming back, right? My legs are wide. I'm bringing Tadasana with me. I'm bringing the midline with me. I'm opening in this space. You already know what this whole pose is. Then I'm going to go over and take my arm off, right? Then I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to go this way. Don't lose the ground. Let it be springing you, like rolling around, and then reach into more space. Good, and then release. So remember, whether your arm is up or not, your spine is already reaching for more space, right? What happens to a more physically abled student is they think that the pose is realized by being attached to the movement. It wasn't. It was never about that. It was about the expression your spine gets. I'm going over. I'm grounding. I'm making it be slightly fun by rolling around, and then I'm opening. Now I'm going to take the arm down, and I'm going to get the opening without moving my arm. Good. So in order to extend out the arm that didn't move, that's why I like to tell you, you have more than two sets of arms, by the way. Your spine has a whole bunch of arms, right? So I'm going this way. I'm curious. When I had you like go and this time extend your arm without extending your arm. Can you, when I ask you to do that without just your imagination, Renee, you're extending your arm. You're busted, right? And then release. I'm curious. I kind of want to ask a question. Well, I would. So you might, if you haven't answered, unmute yourself. But so, in order to extend the arm that wasn't there skyward, what did you do? Now, if you just sat there and just stayed in your head, what the hell are you coming to my class anyway? Because don't just stay in your head, right? So, Stephen, you've got a hand up.
Ground the sitting bones.
Ground the sitting bones, right? That would be, in other words, find the ground to extend the limb that isn't there, right? Not falling, but rising, like rolling around. The rolling around is like letting yourself have more limbs, right? Like your spine is actually got a whole bunch of limbs. That's the kind of fun I would have as a little kid, right? I would be like, shit, I can do stuff like this. You kidding me? I could play on the ceiling. I could jump off that ledge and never come back to the ground. I'm sure I could do that, right? All right, so you answered. I did not pay Stephen to say that, right? But I like it. I like it, right? So I'm going back to the pose, right? So the idea that grounding allows your interoception and proprioception to integrate in an asana. So there's a tricky scientific line I just put in there, right? Turns out that my proprioception is just dependent on where my body is, right? So now I'm forward, I'm getting that sensation, I'm making sure, right? I'm getting that groin open, I'm bouncing a little bit because damn it, this can't be so serious, right? And then I'm going to reach without the arm reaching, and then I'm going to add the arm, and I'm going to realize that I both gained and lost something when I move the arm. Come on down. I gain something. It fulfills my sense of what my body should follow my instruction. I lose something. I do it. It's both. That's the thing about yoga. It actually makes you admit the truth, or you should be committed to the truth. So I'm going over because I do lose something and I gain something. Good, and then release. Legs back together. Find Tadasana again. Your mind is mostly going to make things heavier, right? Sometimes it feels like freedom in the beginning, right? Legs wide again. So now I'm going to feel the same pose, right? Come over, come up, take the arm up or not. Obviously, I've taught it like it doesn't matter. If you don't take it up, maybe keep it on your rib cage or something, right? So now how am I going to reach beyond my fingertips? How am I going to use the ground like rolling around? So for me, it's not just grounding my sitting bones. I push my forearm down into my down leg. Then I bring the shoulder blade back towards the midline. From the grounded energy going to sitting bones or forearm, and then extend beyond my fingertips. I don't reach for it, right? And then release. If I reach for the space outside of my body, I lose it. If you reach for the space outside of your body, you lose it. Other way now. Getting it all happy and open and a little bit bouncy. Either I take my arm wide or I ground to take it wide. I ground down, shoulder blade toward the midline. I don't reach for the space in the room. I extend into it by going towards my midline. Good, and then release. Bring your legs back together. Rocking again. So often, and then like so that tendency of the, you know, there's a line from I've been thinking about this line lately from a Radiohead song. There's always a siren that sings you to a shipwreck, right? So I've been thinking about, it's from a great song called There, There. It's pretty dark though, right? But the siren of self-doubt is one of the things that sings my yoga practice to a shipwreck, right? Like I can go, what am I talking about integrating with the space around me? What am I talking about? Right? The adult in me wants to go, no, right? Like that's not what what do you mean you don't reach for the empty space, you extend into it? How does any of this even mean? Our sirens take all different forms, right? The ones that are singing us to shipwreck. But you know how I thought I heard that line before? I thought it was the silence. This is, again, me being me, right? I thought it was the silence always sings in a shipwreck. Right? Have you ever been something like you've been to a place of a battle or like a museum that's really old or an old building? Can't you hear the silent singing? Right? Like the time of the place kind of sings to part of your nervous system, right? Like there's a tingling that happens when you really realize time, right? I like that siren. Not everything's always trying to lead me to a shipwreck. Inhale, take your arm up. Exhale, revolve. So I can actually dynamically open to the space around me if I lift my chest, right? Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. But if I'm, and then come back to center, if I'm too attached to the twisting part, if I'm too attached to the outer form, I forget the rolling around. Then I just try to like crank it and I get real physical, right? And I forget to bring all of me with the pose, right? So I'm going to do it this time. I'm going to go and I'm going to go, okay, wait, everything's coming with me as I ground down and not fall, but rise, inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve, like rolling around. Like I can get that kind of, I'm going to do some rhythm because what the heck, right? Because when I realize, and then come back to center, when I realize all that's happening in the yoga pose that I'm missing, right? There's what I know, and then there's what I'm missing. I tend to have the siren that I'm not good enough start singing in my head, right? And then over to the side. And then I'm going to have everything come with me, like rolling around like a little kid. So I'm not just trying to win the twist with attachment to the outer form. I'm trying to make sure I keep the ground in the pose, rise like rolling around, lift under the collarbones, grounded by broadening the space between the shoulder blades. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. And that's the serious part of it. Now I just want it to be fun. So I'm going to let the pose drop. Then I'm going to come back into it with more rhythm. And then I'm going to let the pose drop. And I'm going to come a little faster, right? But I'm not dropping any of the happening. And then come on back to center. We didn't do that on the other side. And I like this. So I'm going to go over to the other side. And I'm going to let the pose drop. And then I'm going to have it happen. And then I'm going to, and each time I'm doing this, I'm filling the space in the whole room from my spine outward, right? My body is showing me connection, not my mind, right? So I'm doing the pose again. So I'm pumping back and forth a few times because I'm wanting my body to show me this truth and my mind to be passive, right? And then come on back to center. We're a little bit off, but because I've done one side unevenly, right? So I'm staying light here. Remember, we have two parts of our nervous system. So now I'm coming back to sitting up. We've got the interoceptive one, which is less developed and less evolved because it wasn't as necessary to run from tigers, right? The less development of our inward state is threatening our survival on the planet, right? So I'm sitting as I'm coming back to the midline. I'm finding the midline to help the world. Doing my little part. Come forward. Breathe. Dang, I don't inhale and exhale evenly into each lung. It's not my fault, but I can work on it. So I'm using the reference on my forearms, on my legs, and my sitting bones and my feet to help me find how to take more breath into my left lung. Because my body will show me. My body shows me the dimension. My mind judges it. So the yogis are going to tell you that it's the judgment that holds all the suffering. That if I could keep my mind integrated, I'd suffer less. Good, and then really such tremendous gains have been made by human beings having our minds face outward rather than inward. But the paradox of the yogis is that's also been the root of so much of our suffering. So I'm doing a gentle back bend here because I'm wanting to have my connection to the space around me be alive before I practice corpse pose, shavasana. I want to nourish the fractal between inside and out. Don't worry about the word fractal. I want to have shavasana nourish my connection from inside to out. So I'm sitting here and preparing for shavasana, integrating a sense of symmetry, a sense of lightness, not falling but rising, like rolling around. For me, because I'm always like this because of my scoliosis, this space here is not as free. So when I'm preparing for shavasana, there are certain places that I know I need to touch. This space closes, this shoulder blade rolls out, this shoulder blade rolls forward, this shoulder, right? So this space collapses because I need to tuck this shoulder in, right? And ground. And so I'm just going to feel that, even though I can't sustain it. So I can bring the imprint into a more even shavasana. I just told you one of my stories. What's the story for your body? What's the place that doesn't get the joy of shavasana? Because you're not balanced, right? And I can't maintain it. I don't want to work this hard with my shoulder blade at shavasana, but I want to know it's there. Then I'm going to let go. I'm going to now go more actively into shavasana. How do I let the chair hold me up? How do I not fall into my chair, but let the chair help me rise? Well, you've been doing that the whole class. So now I want to balance my head over my neck by letting the rising, the rolling, the rising gently bring my head into better balance. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. Ooh. The earth creates the lightness. Soften around the temples, the jaw, the inside of the mouth. Relax the belly to relax the throat. It's hard for the mind to let go. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation. Slightly longer exhalation. When you're ready, open your eyes. It's too much. Close them again. And then open them again. So, ending again with Dave Matthews, right? Different song, even closer to my heart. One Sweet World, right? So it's a great lyrics, right? Everyone needs to know the lyrics of this song, right? 9 planets surround the sun, only one does the sun embrace. Upon this fallen one, we take so much for granted. But so let's go out and sleep tonight, right? And then he basically says, for here we can rest safely, right? That on the earth we can actually rest, but more than rest, we can play, right? And it's such an important thing. The heaviness and the extra terra, earth that we feel as disabled people, is actually a doorway to lightness. If you realize what's happening here and you don't let it just be compression, right? And it's not just your imagination, right? It's actually the way it is here. Your joints hover in space. The inner body's not as affected by gravity. Think of all the things I've been saying to you. Because it's not falling, it's rising. And the only way you know it is by having the ground and receiving the gift, right? So let us sleep outside tonight, lay down in our mother's arms. I was talking, so I can hear the saying, for here we can rest safely. Boy, have we lost that as human beings. Fallen in love with our minds that are facing outward and only seeing threat, we're forgetting. We're forgetting. So when you're practicing asana and you're realizing grounding, you're changing the world. You're doing your part. That's how serious I think asana is. And I think it's beautiful and it's happy. And it's like rolling around. Good luck this week. I'm going for it. I'm writing a grant for Team Adaptables. So we'll see how if I can do it. All right. Namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you.